Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I've got another fall nail set for you guys. But first I'm just going to start with removal. I had to take this nail off prematurely, but I just used a sticky tab to glue it back on for a couple of days. This is the look I'm going to do today. You guys voted for this one on my Instagram. I found this photo on Pinterest, so I'm not sure who to credit. And it's been about a week now that I've had this nail set on. I'm finally going to remove it with the Jello Jello 1 Kill Remover. If you don't know what Jello Jello is, it's basically just a peel-off base coat that comes with this serum right here. You can apply it when you're ready to remove your nails, and it peels off pretty easily. I like to leave it on for about 5 minutes, lift the edges and apply more of the 1 Kill, and then leave it on for another 5 minutes before attempting to peel it off again. It looks super easy to peel it off in this footage, but I actually forgot to record the part where I lifted the edges first and let it soak in again. So it doesn't come off as easily as it does right here. You kind of need to give it a little tug and another quick soak, and then it'll do this. And after that, you're left with a flawless removal, pretty much no damage at all. Considering I don't have to soak off these nails, this is a pretty good removal method. If you're looking for a good peel off base coat, I definitely recommend this one. But let's go ahead and move right into prep. I'm doing a pretty normal prep routine again with my peel off base coat, starting by clipping the nails shorter so that they don't show underneath the extensions. Sorry, I'm so far down in this clip, I didn't realize it until later. Then I'm just filing the edges of my natural nails to smooth out any jagged parts using a glass hand file. And after that, I'm applying some cuticle remover around the area. I let this sit for about 10 seconds before I start pushing back my cuticles. And then I wash everything off with soap and water. I usually clip the proximal nail fold a little bit too with some cuticle nippers, just to get rid of that white dead stuff. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, it's totally optional. Then I gently buff my nails with a fine grit buffing block. Since I just took my set off, I don't need to do much. They're already pretty dry. I'm just going to get rid of the shine. I also spray them down with some isopropyl alcohol to get rid of the dust and debris from filing and buffing. Now I'm using a dehydrator. This one's new. It's the Protein Prep Vitamin from Sweetie Nail Supply. It evaporates super fast. I was honestly kind of shocked. As soon as I brushed it on, it was basically dry. It's supposed to remove oils and prep the nail plate before applying a base coat. The instructions say to put this on first and then follow up with your base coat. I'm using the Jello Jello Peel Off Base Coat today since I want these nails off again after just a couple days. This is basically just going to be a practice set that I'm doing, so I'm not going to have these nails on for too long. I'm just going to apply 2 thin layers on my nails and cure under my big lamp for 60 seconds in between coats. For the nail tips, I'm using these half cover square nail tips from Unigella on Amazon. I love these tips. They're pretty good quality, not super curved, they're more on the flat side. I'm just picking the ones that fit my nail from sidewall to sidewall. You want them to fit just right, not to overlap, just the perfect size. I'm bringing out my little UV flower nail lamp. It's motion activated, which is perfect for gluing on nail tips with UV gel. I'm going to use the Jello Jello Peel Off Base Coat to glue these tips on. You could also use a regular gel base coat or a UV gel glue if you're using a peel off base coat like me. If you're not using a peel off base coat and you've done normal prep, you can just use regular air dry nail glue and that'll work best. I place the tips on the free edge of my nails, flash cure them under my lamp for about 10 seconds to hold them in place, and then pop my whole hand under my big lamp for 60 seconds for a full cure. And once that's done, I trim the tips using an acrylic nail trimmer. After trimming the nail tips, I'm going to start prepping them. I'm using a mandrel bit with a 180 grit sanding band at 7,000 RPM. I'm filing the free edge just to blend the extension into my natural nail, and I'm being super careful not to actually file my natural nail or the Jello Peel Off Base Coat. My main focus is on the plastic part that's close to my natural nail. I'm going to thin it out so that it lays down more naturally. I'm also etching the lengths of my extensions, which is just going to help the polygel grip to them. Make sure you file every corner really well because polygel is prone to peeling off of the nail tips if you don't know. Trust me, I've had it happen multiple times to me before I started doing this step, so I highly recommend taking the time to do this. And once that's done, I dust off the excess. Since I'm using a peel off base coat, the dust tends to stick to the sticky inhibition layer. So I like to wipe everything down with some rubbing alcohol, including the tips, to remove any leftover debris. For today's color, I'm using Le Coral from Macart. I think I'm saying that right, don't quote me though. It's basically a very natural light pink. I'm just going to grab my dampen dish and put some isopropyl alcohol in it. This one's about 70%, but anything higher works too. I'm also going to use a generous amount of lint-free wipes during this process. This is my polygel brush. It's dual-ended, so there's a spatula on one side and the bristle side on the other. But before using that, I'm applying a sticky gel base coat onto my nails. This will really help the polygel grip. I like to apply it to both the extensions and my natural nails. Technically, you only need it on your natural nails, but I feel like doing the whole nail just helps better with retention. Once that's on, make sure to give it a full 60-second cure under a big lamp. Now I'm going in with my first bead of polygel. This first bead is basically going to cover most of my nail. I like to start in the middle of my nail plate and then bring it all the way down to the tip and cut it off from there. Then I start patting the gel down, spreading it evenly from sidewall to sidewall. Keep your brush saturated with rubbing alcohol. You just need to dip it in, drain the excess on the side of your dish, and then tap it on a lint-free wipe, and that'll give you like a perfectly saturated polygel brush so that the polygel doesn't stick to it. Having a dry brush is usually what causes that problem, so just make sure your brush is saturated at all times. Once the first bead is evenly spread from sidewall to sidewall, I like to blend the polygel near the natural nail towards the cuticle and kind of flatten it down. Then I swipe the excess polygel down the nail to remove whatever is left over and smooth it out. This also helps shape the polygel and keeps it from getting lumpy as you work. After that, I cut off the excess portion, and that's your first bead. Go ahead and fully cure it for 60 seconds. Then I place the cuticle bead directly underneath the cuticle area. Basically take a pea-sized amount and spread it from sidewall to sidewall, leaving just a little space near the cuticle. Once you've spread it out from sidewall to sidewall and you've got most of that area covered, you can start tucking the polygel closer to the cuticle. Just be super careful not to actually get any of the gel on your skin. You're basically just closing it in gently. Once the polygel reaches the cuticle area and the sidewalls, swipe the excess down, and this will add structure and create an apex, which is super important for long nails like these. A good apex helps avoid breakage and just makes your nails stronger overall. Before curing that bead, take another brush and dip it in acetone and swipe it around the cuticle area and sidewalls. This ensures that none of the gel is touching your skin before you cure it under your lamp for 90 seconds. Here's a little side view and front view so you guys can kind of see what shape I'm going for long nails like these. Then go ahead and do the rest of your nails. In my last video, some of you guys said you like to watch the application process, so I'm keeping this part in instead of skipping over it like I usually do. I'll put a timestamp in the corner if you do want to skip this and go straight to the filing process. That's totally fine. Or you could stick around if you want to see the full application. I usually do 1 or 2 nails at a time because polygel can kind of move around if you leave it on for too long. But today I decided to challenge myself and do most of my nails all at once. It was a little bit of a struggle though, but it was much faster doing them all at the same time. I don't know if I'd recommend this for long nails like these though. I feel like it would be much easier to do it all at the same time on shorter nails, but with longer ones, there's just more of a chance of them bumping into each other, which can kind of mess up your application. I know it did for me. Plus, there's just more surface to work on, so it just naturally takes more time. I did all the first beads at once though, and it worked for the most part, but for the cuticle bead, I wanted to play it safe, and I switched to doing one nail at a time, and that gave me pretty good results. After application, you'll be left with a sticky inhibition layer. That doesn't mean your nails aren't fully cured, you just need to wipe it with some isopropyl alcohol or acetone. Definitely do this before moving on to the filing. I'm bringing my drill up to 20,000 RPM and just filing and shaping my nails. There wasn't a lot of bulk on this set. My application was pretty good overall. It was just kind of bumpy, so I used a 180 grit sanding band for the full filing process. If your application is a little bit more on the thicker side and you want to remove a lot of the polygel, you could just use a coarser grit like 100 or 80, which speeds up filing. I find that 180 grit works best if you're just trying to shape your nails without taking off too much product, so that's exactly what I used. I'm going back and forth on the nail, smoothing all the lumps and the bumps. Once every part of my nail has been touched with the sanding band, I bring my drill speed down to around 7,000 or 8,000 RPM to refine the shape of the cuticle bead and make it flush with the nail. I keep the drill parallel to my natural nails at all times to avoid it digging in, and I'm just focusing on removing that excess product right at the top of my cuticle area. The highest point of the polygel nail should be on the stress area. I've included a side view so you guys can kind of see what I mean and what I'm doing. I'm basically just shaping and removing excess product while keeping my drill parallel. You definitely don't want to dig into your natural nails and cause any damage. You just want to remove the extra polygel. I'm just going to continue filing each nail like this. For the lengths, I kept the drill at 20,000 RPM, and when I moved on to the cuticle area, I slowed it down to around 8,000 RPM. Now I'm using a 180 grit hand file to shape the sidewalls of my nails. I like to file not just in a straight line, but kind of like curve it over the rest of the polygel nail, like in this sort of motion, while straightening the sidewalls. It's a little bit hard to explain, but you guys can kind of see in the video what I mean. I'm also filing the very tip of my nail, the free edge, to make it nice and straight as well. Next, I'm buffing my nails with a fine grit buffing block to remove all the bumps and lumps. This is the final step of the filing process, and it really smooths out any scratches from the filing. If you used a coarser grit file, this step is especially important because you don't want those visible dents in your nails. I usually spend about 30 seconds to a minute on each nail and just really take my time removing those scratches. After filing, I wash my hands with soap and water to remove all the dust, and then I cleanse them with some rubbing alcohol to remove any oils from the soap and prep them for gel polish. Now onto the nail art. Here are the colors I'm using today, all from Madame Glam. These are the closest shades that I have: Foggy Night, Raspberry Explosion, Cake Batter, Spiced Cinnamon, and Perfect Black. I also ended up using their white gel polish later on. Before I dive into any of the art details, I'm applying a layer of matte top coat all over my nails. You don't have to be super precise with the application of this. You just want to cover the majority of your nails to smooth out the surface, then fully cure it and it'll make your nail art look even and nice. Now I'm putting my colors on my glass palette, starting with Raspberry Explosion and Cake Batter because I'm using these for my French tips. I'm saturating my 20mm liner brush with Cake Batter first. I'm doing the V method today because I want super symmetrical French tips, and this method works best for that. Basically, I draw a line where I want the smile line to begin, then create a V shape from the sidewall to tip. This becomes your guide. Then connect the line to the sidewalls, and that'll create your perfect smile line every single time. After that, I just fill it in with my liner brush, and there you go. I usually use a 15mm liner brush for my Frenchies, but I went with a 20mm today because this is an extra long nail set. Longer liner brushes like this are perfect for long nails. It just kind of makes your line work easier and straighter. I filled in both French tips on my index finger and my ring finger, fully cured them, and I actually double coated these two nails because the polish was just a little bit sheer. Then I wiped off my brush with a lint-free wipe. No need to wash it with acetone or alcohol or anything like that if you're just going from lighter to darker colors. I just went in with Raspberry Explosion on my thumb, middle, and pinky nails. Using the same method, draw the line, create the V, connect the sidewalls, and fill it in. You can also use your gel polish brush directly from the bottle to speed up the application like I did, or just stick with your liner brush. Either works really well. With my French tips all done, I noticed that the ring finger had a red smile line, so I used the rest of Raspberry Explosion to create a colored smile line there. This part was a little bit tricky with the longer bristles. If you want, you can switch to a shorter brush, but it wasn't that bad. Now moving on to the blooming gel design. I put more of Cake Batter on my palette as well as Spiced Cinnamon for the brown shade. I'm using this blooming gel from a cart. I basically apply the blooming gel to the French tip area halfway down the nail. You don't need to cover the full nail, just the parts where you're going to work on. This part took me a lot of attempts. I included the clips where I totally messed up a bunch of times, just so you guys can see the full process. Sometimes it just bloomed too fast, or it ended up off center. The flower just leaned more to the right or to the left. I think just doing it on camera made it a little bit trickier, but eventually I got it, but I did it off camera. For the flower, I dipped my dotting tool into the polish and painted the petals. I didn't let it bloom for too long. I just let it bloom for like around 2 to 3 seconds as soon as I did all 5 petals. And then I cured it in my lamp super quickly. In the inspiration photo, the flowers aren't super spread out. They're still pretty intact. They just bloomed a little bit, so I didn't let it bloom for too long. But once you're happy with how they look, you can fully cure them for 60 seconds. For my pinky, I just did 3 petals at the very edge. That part wasn't too hard because it didn't need like all 5 petals, so it took a lot less precision and it was pretty easy to do. Just a heads up, by the way, most of the rest of the process is a little bit blurry. My camera gets extremely blurry if I get too close to the lens, which is crazy because I usually have it super far away from my hand and it's literally at 2x zoomed in. I don't know, sometimes I get too close and it just gets really blurry, and I'm so sorry about that. Next, I applied the blooming gel to my Cake Batter French nail tips. and I'm gonna do both nails at the same time. This part's pretty easy. You don't need a lot of precision here, and it's actually pretty fun. Just pick up the brown gel polish and apply it quickly, but don't put as many dots as I actually did here. I ended up applying way too many, and I ended up filing some of them later. You want to leave just a few empty spaces. And you can also gently wipe the sidewalls with a lint-free wipe like I'm doing here to keep the shape intact. Then cure for 60 seconds. After that, I just quickly added the white little lines and dots on my pinky. I initially thought it was the same cream color I used for the flowers, but as I was looking at it, it just looked more and more like a white gel polish to me, so that's just what I used. And I did this with my 20mm liner brush. Super simple, nothing complicated. This is where I decided to remove some of those brown blooming gel dots. You might be wondering, why didn't she just paint over it with cake batter? Honestly, I tried that first. For some reason, it just looked a little off, like it looked lighter in color than the background. I think the blooming effect made it trickier that way, and I don't know, it just didn't look like the right color, and you can easily tell that it was painted over. It just didn't blend in right. It kind of looked like whiteout on paper, you know, when both are white, but you can actually just tell when there's whiteout on the paper. So I just found it easier to file it off instead, and it actually looked pretty decent. It wasn't uneven or anything. I ended up with some of those bald spots with no brown, which was perfect and exactly what I needed to make room for those little colorless leopard spots later on. You guys will see what I mean. I added some black gel polish to my palette and used a 4mm liner brush to outline the colored spots on my French tips. I actually found that the less precise I was, the better it looked. Like, a shaky hand really works in your favor here. If the lines are too circular, it can look kind of weird. You kind of want it to be a little bit wavy and messy. And I also created some of those empty leopard spots I mentioned earlier. I'm so glad I filed off some of the brown. Those empty spots really made a difference. If you guys can see, it turned out really, really cute. Next, I added Foggy Night to my palette and used a 15mm liner brush to paint the cherry stems. I basically just mimicked the inspiration picture and added a little leaf in the corner. Make sure to cure this before moving on. Then I grabbed some more of Raspberry Explosion and a red non-stick extension gel. I've never used this before. I'm so glad I got to try it today. I took a decent amount and split it into 2 equal pieces and placed them on my nails where the cherry stems go. I patted them gently into place and kept them as round as possible, but also laying them flat a little bit. Absolutely do not touch this with your bare hands. Always use gloves or tools like I did. Avoid touching gel with your skin. After placing them, flash cure for about 10 seconds to hold them in place, and then fully cure those pieces under your lamp for 60 seconds. I really wanted to make this match my French nails, so I went in with Raspberry Explosion over the red pieces, because I just wasn't feeling how bright the red looked on its own. Then after you apply your gel polish, just cure it for another 60 seconds. Next, I'm applying this mayo top coat. This stuff self-levels so perfectly. It's especially helpful for the nails like the cherry nail, where you can't really coat them evenly. It just self-levels like a dream and makes working over bulky nails so easy. Super high quality and highly recommended if you want a reliable top coat. I'm also going to apply it all over my other nails and cure it for 60 seconds until it's fully set. Now I'm using the Jinbei Crazy Thick Top Gel to adhere my nail charms and do the 3D effects. This is a non-wipe overlay gel. It's great for 3D designs and also adding charms. I'm using a 12mm liner brush for all of the next steps. For the accents, I grabbed some silver round crystals in 4 different sizes. Most of the ones I'm using are the smallest, and I also picked one of the largest ones for the rhinestone French. So after curing my top coat, I applied the Crazy Thick Top Gel to my middle nail over that French line and started placing my rhinestones, going from largest to the smallest towards the sidewalls. This gel works really well at adhering charms. It doesn't move at all when you're working. You can do everything at the same time, not worry at all, and it's just really satisfying. Then I moved on to my thumb and my pinky, using the second smallest rhinestone for both of those nails. I flash cured them in place. For the 3D lines, I just dipped the tip of my brush in the overlay gel, held it down so that gravity pushed the gel to the tip, and created those lines. And I flash cured after each stroke for 10 seconds. The gel can hold its shape pretty well if you want to do this all at the same time, but I like to flash cure just in case I make a mistake and I just want to like wipe it and fix it without ruining my previous line work. Now, I didn't have the exact bow I saw in the inspiration picture, so I just kind of improvised, and this is what I'm going to use today. It's just a simple white bow, but I think it still looked pretty cute and matched the white gel on the pinkies, so I was pretty happy with it. I put the overlay gel on my nail and placed the bow charm over it and then flash cured it in place for 15 seconds. And then I added a little bit more gel around the bow to secure it and prevent it from catching on anything. For the final touches, give your nails a gentle file, especially if you have square nails. It makes a big difference in the final shape. I'm just using my 180 grit hand file from earlier to shape up the free edge. Then I moisturize with some cuticle oil. I'm using the Blossom Rose Cuticle Oil today, which is super refreshing and keeps the surrounding skin hydrated. And here are the finished nails. They are literally the cutest thing ever. It's giving major baddie vibes. This design is super eye-catching and so pretty. I'm really happy with how they came out. Let me know what you guys think of this set, and if you enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in my next one.